Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. We'll get underway in just a moment. Okay, let's get started. So today's webinar is IPA Books Plus Payroll and Single Touch Payroll as well. So looking at the two things there. Particularly focusing around the standalone payroll option in IPA Books Plus. My name is Corey Anderson. I'm an IPA member and I'm also the Customer Success Manager at IPA Books Plus. So just before we do get cracking away with all of this, now of course today's webinar is recorded as well, so it will be on the IPA YouTube channel as well. So if you do miss out on anything or want to refresh, and I know some people might also join after the start as well too, it will be available there for anyone to have a look at as well too. So audio options are today, so everyone is muted to make it a better experience for everybody. We do recommend using the computer, the speakers on there, to use that, or if you prefer, you can dial in. Just switch the option over to phone call and then follow the prompts within there. You can do the sound check as well too. So that's the way that we can do that. So if you do have any questions coming up because we're not able to use the microphones and that today, we're using a tool called Slido.com. So it makes a better experience for everyone. So we're not using the questions in the go-to panel at all. That's not monitored today. So if you do have any questions, make sure you go to Slido.com. Type in the event code into there as well, so which is just IPA. You don't have to register for anything. You don't have to sign up for anything. You just go in there, type the question, because we're going to bring all the questions up on the screen, and we're going to go through them all and go through them. So that's how we're doing the questions in this today, and they're going to be answered at the end of the presentation today. That little panel, if that panel does get in your way at all, just click on the little orange arrow and it'll disappear off the screen. And then if you want it back for any reason, just click it again, it'll reappear. So before we do get underway, just a disclaimer on today's webinar. The contents of this video is of a general nature and is for guidance only. IPA Books Plus does not provide professional or taxation advice. Viewers should consult with a professional body for advice, or the ATO, of course, for advice on their specific circumstances. So if you do have any questions on that, just what we're going to get into now is just having a look at IPA Books Plus and the standalone payroll option. So the IPA Books Plus standalone payroll. So IPA Books Plus is a modular-based system. There are 6 modules. So there's the core module, invoices, bank data, projects, time and expenses, invoicing, and payroll. Now, most of those, say invoicing, bank data, you need to have the core module, you need to have 2 modules there. But the thing that we've done with the payroll module is that you can just have the payroll module on its own to cater for yours and your clients' payroll that they require. Turn that on, $5 a month. So it's a very good price, $5 a month for an unlimited number of employees. It's an easy to use system. We're going to have a bit of a look at it in a moment. Single touch payroll compliant, of course, super stream compliant, the heap of payroll reporting in there, can do ABA files as well too. We can see the little table there. There are 2 levels as well. So there's a $5 a month level, which is the light one. There's also a medium level for $7 a month. Both have unlimited employees. The difference is only the fact that we can use a SuperStream gateway called AusEddy to lodge SuperStream data automatically. So remember, this is SuperStream, not Single Touch Payroll. Single Touch Payroll, I'm going to cover that in a chunk of the session as well too today. So how to get that through. So let's go and have a look at the standalone payroll side now. Now, just remember, just as I'm going through on this session as well too, we're not going to see this just for a little moment while I am going through and looking at the software. In the bottom right left-hand corner of the slides is the question. So if you have any questions, go to slido.com, type in the event code IPA and put your question in there, and we're going to answer those all at the end of the day. Okay, so let's go into IPA Books Plus. So IPA Books Plus, so you need to have registered for IPA Books Plus, so we just click on the register for free and we log in there and go through the prompts there. If you need to know more about anything around the signing up and that sort of process, just go to, you can go and find that from the IPABooksPlus.com, and there's a quick start guide on that there. So I'm signing in, and what I'm next going to be seeing within here is I'm going to see all of my books within here. So if I just take this back to where I normally always come in, so I'm sitting under the My Products Books Plus, and what we need to do, because we want to look at adding this for your client. So most of you are on the line are all cloud advisors or wanting to become cloud advisors. So you're the accountants on the line. So all the accountants, we want you guys to be cloud advisors. So we go down to the partners area. And for joining as a cloud advisor, your local BDM will get in touch with you around that and help you with that process. But once this is all there, there's all these advantages for being a cloud advisor, partners area, and I click on add a client. I type in the client's email, and this is going to look to see if the client is or is not on the system already. So they might already, if unlikely that your clients have already had a book or something, so the information won't be there. This email I'm using already does exist on the system. So what that means is the first name, last name, phone number is already entered in. I just need to choose that the entity that I'm using in there. It might be a brand new one or one that's already created. So because they've already got a book there, think about like a bit like the billing client, the header client. I might have multiple entities, but it all comes back under one company. So let's go there. And then we've got this very important option down the bottom. My client will purchase or manage their subscription. So that means that they're going to pay the $5 a month, or I'm going to purchase and manage it on their behalf as well too. So that means I'm going to have to bill that out if I want, or just roll it up into my fees. So got those couple of choices that we can work with on that. So I'm going to say in this case that I will purchase that one. Click on next. And it asks you which product you're using. And we're looking at the Books Plus product, so just it's the only one there. Click on next. And then we enter in the book name. So we just need to add something in there. That's going to be the name that your client's book is known as. It can be the same as that company name back from the start, but it might also be different if they've got more than one entity as well too. So it's whatever makes sense to you in your system as to what you want to call that one there. So I'm going to call this one Armada Industries type. Then I choose the entity type, whether a company, a partnership, sole trader, or further down as a trust. I'm just going to choose a company here. Now, because we're looking at this from a payroll only perspective, I don't need to worry about, I don't have to get too carried away with this data first transaction. But me being the pedantic accountant that I used to be many years ago, I actually want this sort of all looking nice. So I'm going to change that back to the 1st of July 2019. The financial year start date, that's generally always going to be that one, so we don't have to worry about that. That financial year start date can't be changed, not that you'd ever really want to do it, but the first transaction date can be changed at a later point if need be. Register for GST, and because Books Plus is over in the UK, that's why we've got with the IFA, that's why we've got the VAT there. It's up to you whether you tick it. I like to tick it because it sets all the GST stuff up anyway, even if you're not using it for anything except payroll at the moment. It just sets those things up if you ever move on to adding the other stuff on for your client as well too. So just one of those sort of things there. So I'd like to tick that. Then I click on next, and this is where I get to choose the modules that I'm going to be using for Books Plus. So you can see that core is already ticked, and because it's a required module for most of them except the payroll. So that's telling me $5 a month for core. But if I want to use just the payroll only option, under the payroll, I choose light. And when I choose light, you'll notice that under core, the this not yet is now available, and I can turn that off, the $5 off, and just be paying that light option there. So just be aware of that little difference there. So when I change that to not yet for core, I'm paying $5 a month only for my employees. So an unlimited number of employees within that. If I was to choose any other module except for the payroll in that, so if I clicked on the invoices light, it automatically activates the core one and add invoices on. So that's what I mean. You just make sure if you've got payroll selected and you're not paying $5, you've probably still got the core selected there. Then I just go click checkout or submit, and it'll then go process through if I'm paying for it on my credit card that's on file. If your client's paying for it, it'll send a notification to your client that they need to go in and pay for that book. So I'm just going to close that one off because I'm going to show you one that I've already got using here. So I'm going to open up when your client when you've got that book created for your client, it's automatically shared between you. So you're always going to see it in your list, even when you've created for your client and they pay for it. So they don't need to share anything back with you. If they have created something if they've created on their own, when they might need to share it back with you, we just go to the dots, click share with, partner, and that's where you put in they put in your email address and then they share it back with you. And what happens then when I click on next, should come up for me. I've picked an email address that doesn't have a partner. Let me just do a user one here. When I click on that, you'll see the share there, and it will then edit the permissions, and you can choose the permission level that you want they want you to have. So you always want your clients to give you administrator access, so you can do as much as you need in there. Sharing the book, when you create it through the partner area, you're automatically added as an administrator anyway, so you want to keep that anyway. So remember, this is just all about the payroll side at the moment. Okay, so I'm going to go into my Smash Davo Cafe. This is a book where I've got everything turned on. So just going to look at the key features around the payroll side here and what needs to be set up. So I've got everything already set up for you, just to make everything a little bit cleaner in today's webinar. So first things that I need to make sure that I have got set up, and as I say, this is recorded as well too, so we can have a look at that. So the first thing I'm seeing is the dashboard, and for the payroll only side, what you would actually see is this payroll widget up here, and also this payroll setup. The payroll setup one is quite good because it's actually giving you that setup checklist. If say configure payroll general settings. So if I click on that, it's telling me where to go, and I've actually got the little hover finger with the pointer, so I can then go through and go straight to that area, and I can start that setup. So let's click on that, and it takes me through into this settings area and payroll settings, and I'll show you how we got to that one as well too, if we want to get to this from not being in the checklist. So up in the top right hand corner, I've got an administration cog. So click on that and go down to settings. In the settings area, we've got general settings, and then we've got payroll settings, and then I go into payroll general settings, and this is where I was looking at just a moment ago. So this is where I complete the legal contact person, their title, emails, that sort of thing in there as well. The payroll setup, these options are ticked by default or unticked by default, so it's up to you. Just have a read of those, like password protection on pay slips, year-to-date amount on pay runs, which are quite handy, allow editing of pay rates on pay runs as well too. So these sort of things. Even if you're looking at this from just a payroll only option, so from payroll only, there's a number of these things that you don't actually need to worry about completing. So account defaults, so wages, salaries, for the expense account, super and that, don't need to worry about as much if you're just using it for payroll. But if you want to have it set up, if the client ever moves to using this for a full-blown accounting package, then it is nice to have that set up. Further on down is we've got automatic payments, so that's just for creating the ABA files at the end of the pay runs if you want those in there as well, or you can just you can do that without having in internet banking without the ABA files, so uploading those. Bank account, so it'll create a default bank account. The system creates two accounts, my bank account, which is a transactional account, and you can rename that to whatever you want. And there's also a petty cash account, which is, as it says, petty cash. The bank accounts will fill by default with the my everyday for everything, so don't need to worry too much about that. So it's just one of those little things on the setup side just to have a look at and familiarize yourself with. Another part of the setup that we need to have a look at, particularly around for single touch payroll, is under the book settings. I've got all my details there. I want to make sure there's an email address in there, only because it's got this little red star next to the reply to email address, which means it's a default item and I wouldn't be able to save without it. Just need to make sure that I've got the company name, legal name completed, and the ABN as well too. There might be a differentiation between the company name and legal name. So the company name could be Smashed Over Cafe, but the legal name could be the trustee for the Jones Family Trust, for example, because that's the legal name coming from the ABR relating to the ABN that you're going to be lodging the STP for. So just be aware of that differentiation in there. Just need to make sure that we've got the legal address completed and the physical address, as well as the contact details as well too. So just those little things to go through and make sure they're done. Okay. Now, where we need to go to next is we need to go and review. If I go under settings, well, let's go into the leave items. So leave items is the next thing I wanted to review. We've created a number of these by default for you. I've added a couple of other ones in here as well. But one thing I will draw your attention to is the annual leave item. I've turned it off here, has leave loading turned on by default. So if your client doesn't have any leave loading, you just click in that line, come down and delete the information, the 17.5% that is in the leave loading box. So if you're not using that, just make sure of that. The 152 hours on the annual entitlement is 4 weeks at 38 hours. So if they do a 40-hour week or a 37.5-hour week, just make sure that this is adjusted down for that as well too. So just be aware of that. So there's nothing else really in the leave that needs to be worried about. It's just making sure that you're happy with everything in there, or if all the leave ones there, leave loading's turned off if not required. We then move over to the pay items side. And again, a lot of these are all created by default. We just need to make sure that the default account is there if you're using the full-blown accounting package. But the thing I want to bring your attention to is we've got things like ordinary for people on an hourly rate, and we've also got salary for people on an annual salary. So there is a differentiation of what's being used there. Super guarantee is the other important one. If I click into that, and I've created it on here already or adjusted it, the rate and the minimum we take care of. So 9.5% at the moment, we'll change that as need be, just like the minimum, the $450 per month is coded in there, so I don't need to worry about anything there. But what I do need to look at is these pay items included down the bottom here. There's a heap of tick boxes that you need to tick next to. These are unticked by default, and you need to specify what superannuation is calculated on for your client, so in that setup site. So just make sure that you come through and tick that. One of the biggest queries I get is super's not calculating. 9 times out of 10, these things haven't been ticked, so just be aware that you need to come through and tick those. The next little the payroll setup thing I want to have a look at is the pay schedules. So the pay schedules are more a grouping of employees. So when I do a pay run, if I wasn't using a schedule or grouping of the employees, if I hadn't grouped them together, even if I've only got 4, each time I do a pay run, I do what's called an unscheduled pay run, and I have to manually add each employee to the pay run. By using the pay schedules, I am defining a name, and I can have more than one schedule, and I'm adding the frequency, the period, start and end date, and the payment date, and it's going to cycle through each time on that when I do a scheduled pay run. I add my employees there, so when I say I want to do this scheduled pay run, and you'll see it shortly, the employees will automatically be added to the pay run as well too. So even if you've got casual employees, add them in there, because you can always remove them from the pay run, and it just means that you're not having to manually add them all the time. So because more often than not, they're going to be there, then they're not going to be there. So just be aware of that. So the pay schedules are quite good. Next thing as well is the year-to-date setup. That's the next payroll setting I want to have a look at in here. So it's just on that second line, year-to-date setup. This is where, importantly, under the leave balances tab, I'm wanting to add in the leave balances when I've moved from the other system that I might have been doing payroll in. So I'm just adding my employee, say annual leave, personal leave, as at this date is the quantity of this, and that quantity is in hours. So just be aware of that. So that means when I do the pays, the leave's going to accrue properly and from this point. And also a nice little feature we have is the leave projection as well too. So let's go now to the payroll section on the left-hand side. And you'll see there is another menu option here for payroll setup, and it's a slightly different setup screen to what we're looking at before. So this might be where you might, I wanted to show you the long way first, but you might want to come here just for those payroll ones, just to do the basic setup and review the pay items from this area. So there is that option. Okay, so the first thing I like to do in the payroll area before I do the employees is create my super funds. So when I create a super fund, I'll just click on add, and you'll notice that I've got a general tab just up the top here above the add contact. I've got the general tab and add contact, and the type of contact can be customer, supplier, super fund. So for super funds tick, but if need be, you can tick the other 2 boxes. You don't need separate cards for those. So this one might be, say, Australian super. Now, there's no save and close button or anything. Instead, it's just a save button. So I'm going to click on save. And when I click on save, what actually happens is it saves that detail there. But then what the system does is it actually opens up 2 new tabs up the top there, one for bank details, one for super funds. Let's go to the super funds tab. The fund, we've then need to choose the fund from the list. So if I scroll down a little bit, Australian super. Now some of them might have, like AMP, have got more than one fund here, so just make sure you're picking up the right ABN. But if I go down to Australian super, and some of them like REST and HESTA are under their full name, so retail employees, health employees, you know. So just be aware of that if you can't find some of those. So we do have the option for super funds not listed if it's a brand new fund, it's not coming up, or some of them are even it's a product under a fund. I know I had one the other day where we had to look at the fine print down the bottom of the form to actually find it, because the name isn't the fund name, it's just the product of the underlying of the fund. So you'll then notice all the USIs come up, so therefore it's just, then I can just double check that. But where we choose that product and the USI is on the actual employee, not in this section here. So if it's an SMSF, you just need to put the fund name and the ESA in there. So that's all I need to do there. So, okay, so that's my super funds created. Let's go and have a look at the employees now. And I've got my 2 employees in here. Let's just have a look at Kate. I'm going to run through some of the things in here quickly in there, because it's Most of it's all much the same. Employee username, not required. We're not using that part as for the time and expenses module, so don't need to worry about filling that in. First name, last name. First name needs to be accurate. So you can see in this one, her first name is Catherine, but she's known as Kate everywhere. But because she's known as Catherine with the ATO, that's her legal name. That's what I need to make sure I put in there. No nicknames or anything like that. Make sure it's their actual legal name. Phone numbers, email addresses, postal addresses, just make sure those are completed. Email addresses aren't a requirement under Single Touch Payroll, but if there is one there, it must be a valid email. Moving over to the personal tab, dates of birth is something we want to make sure is fairly accurate under Single Touch Payroll, so put that one in there. Genders, marital status aren't required, so don't need to worry too much about those. So it's up to you what you fill in on some of the other parts within here as well. We then move over to the employment tab. There's a lot to get through in this one, so hopefully we're all keeping up, because I want to show you the Single Touch Payroll as well and have some question time. But the employment details is the employee number is mandatory. It can be alphanumeric, so I might have WILKAT01 or just 1 or whatever it might be. Full-time, part-time, casual, the pay frequency, and then I can use that pay schedule if I'm using those, so whether that's a grouping. So fortnightly, and then her weekly hours is 38 hours. So even if you've got a casual, I still always put 1 in the weekly hours, just so the system's got some sort of reference, and when you do your pay runs, you adjust that to whatever they actually did work. I then got the important date. So hire dates are very important. Make sure it's not the date, like today's date, the date that you're doing the payroll setup, because that causes complications on the, well, it means your leave is going to be inaccurate to start with. But it is a requirement to have that reasonably accurate. If someone's been with a firm for 17 years, whatever, look, just move back 17 years or something from now. Just get a reasonable estimate in there as well. Because part of Single Touch Payroll is making sure people aren't double claiming the tax-free threshold. And that's where hire dates are important, because I started somewhere today, but I finished my previous job last Friday, for example. The ATO will then know that differentiation. So when they're seeing I'm claiming the tax-free threshold from 2 employers, that there's a distinct 2 different start dates. And also in the previous one, there is a termination date as well too. So just be aware of that part. Under the tax tab, fairly self-explanatory, tax file numbers, residency, the tax scale that they're doing, subject to STSL, which is the old help debt sort of thing, HEX debt as well too. So just do be aware of that one. So complete those as needed. Then let's have a look at the leave tab. So then I've got add my rows in for the leave that this person's entitled to. So in this case, annual leave, personal leave, the start date, and so forth. And you'll see down the bottom there is that leave balance. So you can see where we're accrued up to, what's being used, what's available, and I have got the ability to do a projection from the calendar part there as well too. So just make sure that the leave set up right within there. Final tab that we're going to look at here before we do a pay run, then get cracking onto Single Touch Payroll, is the pay setup. So I've set Kate up with a salary. The rate basis is a salary. She works 76 hours a fortnight, and that's needed there for things like leave calculations, that sort of thing. But the rate for Kate is her annual salary rate. So don't put her hourly rate or their hourly rate in there, because otherwise you're going to wonder why someone's only getting paid 3 cents or something for a pay period. That rate there is their annual salaried rate. So that's because I'm on a salary. If someone was on an hourly rate, like a casual, let's go, I'll just show you one here, ordinary. You'll see that when I choose that the rate basis has changed over to show that as hourly. So that's where for someone who's on a casual basis, you would put in their rate as their hourly rate. So just be aware of that differentiation between the two there. If you do want to get rid of a line anywhere, I just click the cross and off it goes on the right-hand side. Allowances, deductions, just on the allowances as well too, just make sure allowances do match the ATO defined list of allowances as well too. So on their type, so you can call them whatever you want. Say you can call it travel allowance, but you might have to have the type as say car allowance or something, but the ATO have a defined list there. Deductions as well too, they can be set up to be before and after tax. And then I've got my superannuation here. So this is where I've got super guarantee. I choose the fund and then I choose the product. So that's picking from that list of USIs from there. We take care of everything within here as well. And if they've got any salary sacrifice super, I just need to pick that from the drop down list and put in the rate that's in there. So that's just if they have got any salary sacrifice super. So we can easily handle that. It appears in that area. Okay, let's go and do a pay run. Then I'm going to go and jump into single touch payroll. So this is how I get through and get that set up on that. So I go over onto the left, I go to pay runs. I click on add. And that's going to come up and default to unscheduled. And as I said, if I'm using unscheduled, I've got to manually add all the employees in. It takes time. I've got to fill all the information now. So I'm going to go to kitchen. I'm paying my kitchen staff. That's the group I've called it, whatever I might want to call it. I can change the pay run name. The start dates are in. I can change that payment date because I might pay that on a Monday, not a Sunday, for example. Then I click on create pay run. That's going to then go and load through, pull the employee's information out of the system, and it will appear at the top of the list as a draft. I just click into that, and then I'll see my 2 employees in there. If Pierre didn't work because he's a casual that week for something, I just go cross on the right-hand side. He's out of that pay run. Next time I do a pay run, he'll be added back in, simple and easy. If I click into Kate, for example, I can see salary there, everything's in there. It does break it down to an hourly rate on this one just to keep you all on your toes. If I took any leave, I just add a row to add in any leave. Go down further, there's my super guarantee and my tax on that one as well too. So we're then seeing all those sort of little things within there. But you will see, this is why I there's a box tick called year to date, and I'll leave that ticked just on there so I can see where things are at on the pay run for the employee. So I'll just click on there, go back to the previous screen. So when I'm happy with everything, I just finish that pay run. It locks the pay run